And we are live. What's up, STS Nation? And welcome to the second live episode of the day of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises and also delivers on its promise to bring you the best guests in all of true crime. And you're about to see why once again. But first, it is day 4 of the Alex Murdaugh trial, and the prosecution brings its first witnesses to the stand. Defense attorney Dick Harpootlian gets admonished by the judge, Clifton Newman. We'll get into that with both of our guests as well. And all of that is just a fraction of this story. The best guest here to break it all down. The man you are looking at is Eric Bland, anything but bland. He was selected for inclusion in the South Carolina super lawyers in the 2015, 2016, and 2017 list for excellence and recognition as a super lawyer in professional liability. He was one of only 2 in the entire state of South Carolina with this distinction. He also happens to be representing several people directly and indirectly related to this case. One of them, the family of Gloria Satterfield. That is Alex Murdaugh's one-time housekeeper, who some say died under mysterious circumstances. Start getting those legal questions ready. After graduating from the University of Florida, Amy Zimmerich. Did I say it right, Amy?
Zimmercheck. Close.
Zimmercheck. Oh, Zimmercheck. Zimmercheck. She taught high school U.S. history after a serious automobile accident and moved to Lexington, South Carolina. She took a job as a paralegal at the Lexington County Public Defender's Office. She represents another, I would say, fascinating figure in this case, Curtis' cousin, Eddie Smith, who Murdoch says is responsible for the death of his wife and son, and who Amy says otherwise, I am sure. Thanks again for joining us. If you were here for the Coburger Live, we're doing it all over again about Murdoch. Please follow us on Insta, Facebook, Twitter. On Twitter, we're at Podcast STS. Don't forget to support us on Patreon and also get yourselves a YouTube subscription. Without further ado, welcome to both of you. Thanks so much. Amy. Yeah, thank you. This is a horse race, a marathon. Opening statements yesterday. Today, the prosecution brings its first witnesses. In your estimation, who is in the lead right now, even though the race has barely begun?
You know, it's so hard to tell. I'm actually preparing for a trial that I have next week, but I've been live streaming it like probably most other people, and I tell you, it's difficult. I mean, I am a true believer in defense, and so I would like to say that, you know, as he should be, everybody is presumed innocent. You know, and it seems like, to me, it seems like this is going very slowly. I was just talking with someone earlier this evening who thought, oh, it's speeding along. And so, you know, I think that there's still so many facts and so much evidence to be brought forth that I don't know that there's a winner, you know, or a leader quite yet.
We are all probably a little loopy. It's been a long day. I know you guys are covering the trial. You're also working with your clients and on your clients' behalf. I just did a live, so we're just going to roll with it and have fun tonight. This first comment already coming in from Woodthrush 1111, and I was wondering the same exact question. And I'm not a lawyer; I'm a news guy, former news guy, and I like to ask questions. So, Eric, to you, why so few people sitting in court? What is the mysterious answer to that?
The answer is it's by edict of Judge Newman and the security of the Colleton County Sheriff's Office. They don't want to have any type of incidents, and so it's pretty much media and those related to the family of Alex Murdaugh and possibly witnesses. What's interesting is there's no sequestration. I'm actually subpoenaed to be a witness. I'm going to testify next week on behalf of the state. And the reason that there's no sequestration of witnesses is because Buster, John Marvin, Randolph, and a couple other Murdaughs are witnesses as well on the government's witness list and on the defendant's witness list. but Dick Harpootlian wants them to sit behind Alex because it's very important from an optic standpoint. Juries have 24 ears, 24 eyes. And if all of Alex's family is sitting on the side of the defense, yet the state is the one that's championing the deaths of Maggie and Paul, that sends a very strong message to the jury.
Eric, since you mentioned it, tell us a little more. You're testifying. Do you know what day and for what purpose? I know you're connected, but why in this case are you testifying?
Well, as Amy said, it's moving slower than what lawyers would like. But, in a circumstantial evidence case, you have to build the house from the ground up. You have to have a strong foundation. So it's no surprise that the first person on the scene is the one that secured the crime, secured the area. Second person are the responders that come in. And so you have to make sure that the house is fortified, because Dick is going to chip away at that house because it's a circumstantial evidence case. There's no video, there's no recording, there's no eyewitness, no one heard the gunshots. So the conviction, if it comes, has to be based on circumstantial evidence, which is going to be testified to mostly by expert witnesses. So the foundation has to be strong. So even though motive is not an element of murder, a jury wants to know, well, what would be the reason for a husband to kill a wife? I mean, that happens every day of the year. Unfortunately, we have serious domestic violence in our country. But really, what is the reason that a father would kill a son? And that would be motive. The state wants to bring in the fact that Alex had a history of financial crimes, manipulating and stealing money from his clients, from his law firm, from his family and his friends. And they all culminated in being outed at or about the time of the murder of Paul and Maggie. And what the state wants to show is that he was under these financial pressures on June 7th, specifically on the morning of June 7th, prior to the murders that night. He was confronted by his law firm, and his law firm questioned him on missing fees that were diverted from going from a lawyer to the law firm, from a lawyer directly to Alex's bank account. At the same time, Alex and Maggie were having tension because he took out a loan from Palmetto State Bank 6 weeks before the murders, and he pledged his collateral the Edisto Beach House. The problem was Maggie owned that Edisto Beach House, and when he went to Maggie and says, I need you to sign over the beach house as collateral for the loan, Maggie said, nah, I'm not willing to do that. So the bank was breathing down his neck. 3 days after the murders on June 10th, Mark Tinsley, who was the attorney for the Mallory Beach case, had a hearing scheduled where Alex was going to go before the judge and either be held in contempt or have to produce certain financial information. Additional pressures on that day were Alex and Buster were being sued in the Mallory Beach case, and Paul was charged with felony DUI boating. So pressure either breaks pipes or it creates diamonds. And the state is saying Alex broke pressure that day. It came to a head. And what Alex did is decided to kill his wife and his son to divert attention away from him from all of these financial crimes so that people would feel sorry for him. It's a tough motive. I'm not a big proponent of that motive. It's unusual, but I fit in there largely because we'll talk about the Satterfield case and the other cases. What did come out, though, in the opening statement was some interesting evidentiary things that I think are going to be important. The phone mapping shows that Alex was at the dog kennels within 6 minutes of the state's timeline of when the murders took place, because on 8:55, Paul's phone went silent and Maggie's phone went silent. Both were frenetic texters and frenetic callers. They have Alex placed at the kennels 6 minutes before. And additionally, there's a video which is going to show the voice recognition of Alex being in the background of that video. So for a year and a half, Harpootlian's been saying Alex wasn't at the kennels, he was at the house. Now they have him placed at the kennel. The other thing that came out in the opening statement is that we didn't know this. There was
Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's the Snapchat, the so-called Snapchat video, right?
no, the Snapchat video, believe it or not, is an hour before. And
Okay.
that Snapchat video is going to be relevant because I think what's going to come out is Alex was wearing different clothes in that Snapchat video. And then when the police came after he called 911, he was wearing different clothes. So in the opening statement, we now have gun spatter residue on the seatbelt. And then another damning fact is 3 days later, he took a blue coat that had good GSR on it and took it to his mother's home and hid it in his mother's home. So yes, this is all circumstantial evidence. And last night I had a big debate with Mark Garagos on Cuomo. Garagos said, oh, it's all junk science. You know, phone mapping is junk science and voice recognition is junk science and GSR is junk science. And I said, it's only junk science when it doesn't benefit your client. GSR experts have been around forever. Voice recognition has been around forever. All phone mapping is used in almost every domestic violence case, family court cheating cases. So it's going to be, I think, a more powerful case now on the actual circumstantial evidence that existed at the murder scene. I'm not so sure the state is going to risk trying to tie in all these financial crimes. And then additionally, the blood spatter evidence that Harpootlian's been debating about for 5 months. I don't think the state is going to risk bringing in this guy Bevel and then having Harpootlian shred him to nothing left him. So I think what we have now is some very powerful evidence that places Alex at the scene of the murders temporally in time.
So forgive me because my understanding was it was the Snapchat video, but the video that puts him there with the voice. Amy, can you explain what that video is? Who shot that?
Absolutely. I've seen it. I have a copy. I have most of the discovery in this case because of my connection through my client. And it's a very short video. It's less than 2 minutes long, less than a minute and a half long, really. So the Moselle property had a lot of kennels, and a friend of Paul's had about a 6-month-old chocolate lab puppy, beautiful dog, and but his tail was
the tail.
Yeah, so right? His tail was a little bit, and Moselle is it's hard to get it's hard to get service out there. I've been out there numerous times since. And you can't get service. And so he was talking to the owner.
That's debatable. I've been out there and I'll address that after you talk.
Well, not with my crappy carrier anyway. But he had been trying to have this conversation with the owner, his friend, the owner of the dog. And so he said, instead, he's like, let me just take a video of it. So really the video is, you can see Paul, you can see his legs and the dog. And you can see the dog's tail and he's wagging. But what's interesting is going on in the background is that there's a conversation amongst Maggie, Paul, and Alec, because they also own 2 dogs themselves. And the yellow lab, Bubba.
They own 4 dogs.
Yeah. So the 2 that were down there, though. But Bubba he's a little bit rambunctious, and he had snatched up a chicken and he killed it. And I think there was even testimony about the chicken's body was still there today. I think I caught that. But so Alec is, not yelling at Bubba, but he's saying Bubba, and Maggie is questioning whether it's a guinea or just a regular chicken. And both Paul and Alec answered that it's a regular chicken. Interestingly, I was just listening to it the other day for another reason. And to me, it sounded like somebody was spraying a water hose as well. So, it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact. The problem that I have, like I said, I'm a true believer, and I really want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but why lie about being there and I think the testimony came out today as well, is when Paul's body was found by any first responder, the cell phone is sitting on the top of his butt cheek. So it didn't get that way. I mean, somebody put it there, and that,
But Alex said that he went to Paul and he took his pulse. Well, you're not going to take a pulse on somebody's head that's blown off. Okay. So that right there is suspect. I do think that there was a hose going on. I've seen those kennels, and there most likely was either Alex or Paul was hosing down the kennels, because, these hunting dogs are high-strung dogs. They're fed high-protein diets, and therefore they create a lot of waste. So
and why lie about that?
I don't know. Sometimes
that's what gets me.
Yeah. Sometimes the truth, I think it was LL Cool J. He lies about the lies he's lying about. There's no reason to do it. He lies when you don't have to lie.
Right.
So the evidence is strong. I think what's going to be powerful is if the state shows that coming to Mizell that night, Maggie said either to her sister or to a friend, Alex is up to something. He's asking me to come to the house instead of going to the hospital to see his father, because that's reason she came back from Edisto. So what we don't know is what are the text messages that existed between Maggie and Alex and Maggie and Paul to get her back to that house. And then also, did Maggie in that time frame express marital discord to Alex, or express her concerns about her marriage to others, and whether that's going to come in? We don't know.
I do, because I've seen those text messages, and
STS Nation, you're not going to get two lawyers that know this case better, and I'll go so far to say, including Dick Harpootlian and Creighton Waters. These two know every angle of this story. So if you want to get your questions answered, I would start firing them in. Barbara, by the way, Eric, to your point, there has been a lot of talk about the prosecution strategy in basically coming out and saying that he was looking for sympathy to get out of his financial issues, and that's why he basically offed his wife and son. As a parent myself of 3 kids, I get the wife, even though I love my wife, but it happens often. I love my wife. I'll say it again. The son, I just cannot fathom, cannot imagine. But I will tell you this. Alex has a morality screw that's gone. And you don't do what he did for 12 years to vulnerable, needy, traumatized clients, to steal money from them and lie to them and do it to your law partners and do it to your friends. Alex has a way of manipulating people and getting them to do things. And, Alex is all about Alex. It's clear when I investigated all of his financial crimes and what he did with Amy's client, with cousin Eddie, he laundered $2.2 million worth of money through Eddie, giving Eddie cashier's checks. And clearly Eddie didn't get that money. Eddie may have gotten $30 or $50 or $100 for cashing these checks. But Eddie was very important to Alex's life. He was involved in his opioid, whatever that opioid is, and we don't know what it is, but he thought enough of Eddie that he knew that he could use Eddie, and Eddie would be the front person that could take the fall if anything happened. He thought so much of Eddie that he brought Eddie to shoot him on Labor Day. Now, Eddie's going to say, I didn't shoot him. I took the gun away from him. That was not a suicide attempt. It was an attempt by Alex to try to shoot himself so that he could divert attention away from himself as being the killer of Maggie and Paul. And he could say, see, there's somebody crazy out there that's trying to kill me. If he wanted to commit suicide, he didn't need Eddie to do it, because the insurance policy has a 2-year exclusion in it, but it was way beyond that. So all he had to do was kill himself. He didn't need Eddie. Good point.
And I don't know that I know Eric, he and I serve on a council together where we help people, fight funds with lawyers. But but I have a different take on that roadside shooting. And it's just my personal take. Nobody's ever told me this, but
Right.
I'm telling you that Alec is so minute to minute, like he's not a genius planner. I honestly believe, and in my heart of hearts, I honestly believe that he was going to kill Eddie on the side of the road and say that he had to do it because Eddie had killed his wife and child, and it just didn't work out the way that he wanted to. So then we have
That's
this.
interesting. I've never heard that, Amy. That's really interesting.
I firmly believe that poor Eddie,
And Dick's making him the third party guilt. He's trying to bring it in this trial to say that he failed a polygraph, and he's already laid the ground for 2 shooters. Today he laid the ground that there were multiple tire tracks going in and out that the police ran over and they didn't check. And he's laid it out there in the press that he thinks either Eddie was the sole shooter or Eddie was one of the shooters. And you can't convict Alex.
Wasn't Cousin Eddie given a lie detector test about whether he killed them? And he did he fail that?
So that I was brought into.
Be careful, Amy.
I was brought into this case afterwards. So so I'm I'm not even going to address that. Talking about junk science, polygraphs.
That's fair.
There's a reason that they're not.
I agree on that.
There's a reason that they aren't acceptable. And so, it's neither here nor there, but I can tell you this, and Eric knows it too. If there were anything that they could use to connect Eddie to the murders, they would have absolutely charged him and then tried to flip him.
Yeah, they loaded him up.
Right.
They loaded him up in after the Labor Day shooting, and now they loaded him up again on money and drugs, and they're going to nail him on income tax, and they're just going to keep squeezing him like a pimple. But he's got nothing to offer up other than, I was laundering money for Alex. I would go cash checks and give the cash back to Alex.
Well, we'll see.
And I'm glad. Listen, I'm glad that Eric said, "Be careful, Amy," because if I do ask questions, and I know you do have clients, associated with Alex Murdaugh in the case, so please tell me to buzz right off. And I'm glad.
And I just simply won't answer them. But I think that there'll be a lot of questions answered as to what he can offer next week if he testifies. So,
and back to Eric's point, I don't have a comment up, but Sounding Six writes he had millions of reasons, in parentheses here, to kill his wife and son, obviously alluding to all the financial problems, the 99 criminal charges against him. By the way, Denise V writes, "Hi, it's great to see Eric. His Philly accent makes my Pittsburgh heart skip a beat." Yeah. Barbara Florence writes, "I don't think the defense has a defense. It looks like Harpootlian is trying to confuse the jury, aiming for a hung jury outcome."
They do have a defense. They do have a defense. And that defense.
And it only takes one.
Right. Dick is not, every lawyer dreams of a not guilty verdict, but a hung jury is a victory for him. And I think that he's banking on that there's a lot of good cemented goodwill of the Murdaugh family that has taken place over 100 years. Not the stuff that you read about in the paper, but they prosecuted a lot of people that deserve to be prosecuted. The law firm recovered a lot of money for needy people. The law firm and the Murdaughs were charitable. So they're banking on the fact that, one, Dick is, that it used to be that if you put a Republican on the jury, they would be all law enforcement. They're all for government. But today we have a lot of different, when we have MAGA Republicans, they vote the same. They feel the same way about law enforcement, about government, that sometimes the liberal juries feel, liberal jurors, that they distrust the police and they distrust government. So Dick is hoping that he put 1 or 2 advocates on that jury that are going to fight very hard for Alex and say, if we're going to convict somebody for murder, we better have damn good evidence. Because I thought Dick was going to say in his opening statement, look, Alex is a scoundrel. I said in open court that he's going to go to jail for a lot of years for stealing money. But you can't convict somebody of murder just because he's a thief. You have to convict somebody of murder because he's a murderer. And I think that Dick is whittling away by by planting this seed of a second shooter, by showing that the law enforcement in SLED, now Colleton just threw it on SLED's lap, but ultimately that SLED destroyed the crime site, and that there's nothing but junk science that ties Alex. There's no DNA, there's no blood evidence, there's no brain matter, at least that we know of. And he's going to say, Dick's great at lying. I've tried cases with him. He lights fires all over the courtroom, and he diverts the attention away from something that could be damaging. And he's going to list at least 8 things of reasonable doubt to that jury, and he's hoping that he's going to get a hung jury. Look, 2 months ago, we had the Russell Lafitte trial. I was there throughout the whole trial because my clients were part of it. It was the most one-sided trial that everybody in that courtroom declared they've ever seen. And there were still 2 jurors that had to be excused because it sounded like they were going to hang that jury. So that's a case that has a mountain of one-sided evidence. This case is really close.
Harpootlian got some criticism in opening statements for being a little bit lackluster. You guys obviously both know him. Amy, is he a larger than life personality when you meet him?
Oh, he's a lot of things. Yes, he is. And he is a very good trial lawyer. And I respect very good trial lawyers. I felt like quite honestly, I thought his opening would have been a lot more powerful if he would have kept it shorter and just, said, you don't blow away. I mean, we can't, there's a reason that they're not showing these pictures to the media and to everybody, because they are brutal. I've seen them.
We're gonna get into that in a minute. We haven't even gotten to what happened today.
What he was effective on is turning to that jury and turning to Alex and saying, you must believe right now that he didn't do it.
I did agree with that. Mm-hmm.
We fought the Revolutionary War to have a presumption of innocence, and he did not do it. And he hammered that home so many times that he tried to wash out whatever the jury came to there with their preconceived notions of Alex or whatever they think of white power, white privilege, all of that. He cleaned their brain out and reset it to the point he's innocent. Now, the one thing he did that I think that's going to bite him in the butt is he shouldn't have stood up in front of the jury and said, it's my honor and privilege to represent Alex Murdaugh.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why. You introduce your client, I have no problem. And I have no problem saying that he has a presumption of innocence and that he's entitled to it. But Dick knows that he's a thief of $10 million of client funds. Mm-hmm. And we're lawyers. Amy and I are lawyers. He stained our profession, Alex Murdaugh. Mm-hmm. Nobody is going to stand up and say they have the pride and privilege and honor of representing a lawyer who disgraced our profession. And
that's an interesting, very, very interesting distinction and innuendo there, reading into that. Ann Vroom here says, seems to me this case being so highly circumstantial has a fair likelihood of a hung jury. Only one juror needs to be doubtful. Thoughts? Amy, this was to your point. You just need one, right?
Just need one. And that's, I've had victories. I've certainly lost my fair share, but I have hung a lot of juries, and because it does only take one. But that's what I love. As much as I dislike what the defense is doing specifically to my client and what they have done to my client, I still, that notion of beyond a reasonable doubt and innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, even though I don't like that it's being used against me and that it it may work in this case, that's something that I hope that every juror who sits on any trial, not just the Murdoch trial, but on any trial, if they don't adhere to that, then what are we doing? Then our system is broken.
Look, I've spent the last year and a half chasing Alex to the gates of hell. I've recovered over $7.5 million for the Satterfields. I got a $4.3 million judgment against Alex that I turned over to the bar and to the ODC, and within 2 days he was disbarred. I think he's a despicable human being. I think he's a disgrace to our bar. I think he disgraced his family name and ruined 100 years of whatever goodwill that family accomplished. However, somebody asked me the other day, well, you dislike him so much, I'm sure you want him to be convicted. And I paused and I said, no, I only want him to be convicted if he actually did it. I said, I'm a student and a proponent of justice. If 12 jurors say he did it, I'm all for it. Mm-hmm. If 12 jurors say he didn't do it, I'll say justice was done. However, if only one juror says he didn't do it and 11 said he did, I'm going to feel a little bit squeamish. I'm not a big believer in 11-1, okay? That tells me that when I have a one person who's going to hold out, that tells me that they either wanted to get on that jury for a reason. And I'm worried that some jurors wanted to get on this jury for their 20 minutes of fame, write a book. You know, every juror, Amy, after this case has the opportunity to parlay this forever.
Absolutely.
So I don't want 11-1. I really don't. I think that that'll be damaging for our state.
Hello, Eric. I've been watching your interviews from the beginning. This is from Albania and Anissa. Great job on recouping for your clients. Those boys deserve that money. They lost their mom. Get told to file the suit, then not excuse me. I feel like I just swallowed a fly. I think it was you I saw, because I'm a total news junkie, being a former news guy. Was it you that was representing an African American gentleman on, I guess it was
George Jenks.
Yeah, so tell the audience real quickly. Seemed like a very, very decent man, basically robbed by Alex Murdaugh. Just very briefly, tell the people watching the deal with him and what happened to him.
First, let me just deal with the Satterfield thing, because everybody wants to know, did he kill Gloria too? Yeah. No, he did not. I do not believe that the family killed Gloria Satterfield. I think that Alex took advantage of a situation and knew that it was a way for him to make money. And the reason I say that I don't believe that she was killed is that I don't believe that they would have tossed her down the stairs and then let her go into an ambulance semi-conscious with the possibility that she would wake up and say, no, it wasn't the dogs that pushed me down the stairs. Human hands did it. If somebody wants to kill somebody, they're going to kill them before the ambulance gets there. So that's why I don't believe that she was dead. Jordan Jenks is a real sad story too, in addition to Gloria, because he was a childhood friend of Alex. They were friends for life since they were 8 years old. And JJ loved Alex. Alex was his friend. Alex would help him in business. He represented JJ 3 times, and JJ had a wreck, and there was $150,000 that was recovered. After Alex took his lawyer's fees, he gave JJ $42,000, and he told him, I'm going to withhold $108,000 because you have these medical bills, and then I'm going to negotiate with the providers, and whatever the net money is, I'm going to give that to you. Well, he never did it. He took the $108,000, and after all this came out with the Satterfields and then the Pickneys and then Thomases, JJ called me on the phone. Thankfully, we were able to get his $108,000. But if you saw him, he's now a county council member, but he is scarred because he really considered him a lifelong heart bomb friend.
Look at Eddie. I mean, I know that everybody thinks that, and I see your face. I know that everybody thinks that, he's some crazy little character. He's just a normal dude that got
swept up with somebody of power.
Exact same thing. And
Amy, how tough is it for you when people like what I used to do in the media basically frame somebody? And I mean, by frame, I mean describe or, create a narrative that he is crazy cousin Eddie. How difficult does that become for you in the court of public opinion?
I really
You can say you hate us. Don't worry, I won't be offended.
No, quite the opposite. I really love my clients, and so I'm very protective of them. And I Cousin Eddie, hillbilly hitman, those things are so hurtful to him, and they hurt me. The thing that's hard is to not lash back, is to not stoop to that, to that level. And it's just to wait when the appropriate time is right for him to be able to tell the truth, to tell his truth, and for people to be able to see him. Like, even everybody calls him Cousin Eddie, and it, but at the end of the day, Cousin Eddie in, that whatever movie that was, Chevy Chase's movie, he's a funny, likable, just a guy. And I hope that everybody gets to see not only what a victim he was and how hurtful it is to just kind of make fun of him and label him, but just I hope that they get the opportunity to see how genuine of a man he is. This is somebody who was just living his blue collar, hard working life until this. He didn't want any of this. He did not want any of this. And I hope that people see that.
You had me. Now you lost me, because I've seen the checks that went to Cousin Eddie. I'm not saying the money went to him, but he knew that was not the right thing to do. You don't have to have a college degree or PhD, a law degree. You can't have $2.2 million of checks made payable to you. Again,
I can't speak on this, but I think that when all the evidence comes out about the situational things surrounding that, I think you may see a little different too.
I hope.
I can tell you're both strong advocates for your clients. Question I didn't ask yet. Before all this blew up into this crazy chaos in South Carolina, did you both know Alex Murdaugh? Amy, did you know him? What did you think of him?
I knew him. I practice exclusively criminal law. I always farm out or get other attorneys to handle the civil cases that I get. I had actually seen him in August before my client was arrested in September. I actually saw him at the trial lawyers conference, and he hugged me. So he's not somebody I ran in the same circles with, but clearly he was somebody who had a lot of friends, who made people feel good about themselves, with that he was their friend. But I tell you, since reading all his text messages and seeing this, I certainly have a different opinion now.
No, I didn't know him. No one really knew him because they stayed in Hampton County. You never really saw Johnny Parker, Mark Ball, Ronnie Crosby at roster meetings in Richland County or Charleston or Greenville, at the bigger cities in South Carolina. They stayed because they owned that courthouse in that county, and Edgefield, in all those areas there, Colleton and Jasper and Beaufort. So I didn't have a lot of cases down there. You wouldn't see him up here. We knew who Johnny Parker was. He got these monster settlements. You knew he's the guy that breaks CSX. But I never knew of the Murdaugh name until this happened. And now that I'm knee deep inside that law firm, it's shocking the amount of 8-figure settlements that they get on an annual basis. And I'm not talking about the $50 million verdicts. I'm just talking about every day, $14 to $20 to $24 million. Here's a perfect example. My client, Gloria Satterfield, beautiful lady. But she's a housekeeper and she raised children with very low income. If her death happened in Richland County, she had $600,000 in medical bills, probably a settlement anywhere from 1.5 to $2 million. The claim settled for $4.3 million because they were in Hampton County. It was going to go before a Hampton County jury. They just bank it down there. They're bankers.
And what kind of percentage is Murdaugh's firm taking on those settlements?
Depending on if they're friends, they would take a third, or most of them are 40%, just like every other contingent lawyer.
So that's
and then they were double dipping. Alex was double dipping, so he was if a settlement came in and it was $10 million, he would skim a little bit off the top of the Pickneys or some other clients. My client, he took everything. So he would skim off the top. But then with the Gloria Satterfield, he'd inflate his expenses. He permitted Corey Fleming to inflate expenses to the tune of $125,000 in a case that wasn't in litigation, that only had 2 letters written and a mediator fee of $1,500. And yet Judge Carmen Mullen, who approved these settlements, never asked when she looked at the disbursement sheet, can you please tell me how you have $120,000 of expenses in a case that was never in litigation, only 2 letters were sent, and you had 1 day in mediation?
So you know what? It's we are 40 minutes in. I haven't even gotten to the meat and potatoes of today, and that's my fault. I'm not doing a good job of wrangling these two.
I'm talking too much.
So it just means you're gonna have to stay a little longer. Robin Ray writes, why does someone like Mark Aragos, who's good friends with Dick Harpootlian, go on every cable show saying the prosecution has no case, and Ashley Banfield show saying that defense won from opening, sickening? That's what makes our country great, freedom of speech. However, Mark Aragos, who is a friend of our show and has been on, I'm going to have to set him up to debate good old Eric Bland.
I'm probably going to debate him tomorrow night on Cuomo again. The reason is because they're members of the elite criminal defense bar, and all criminal defense lawyers stick up for each other. I mean, Amy wants to do this right now. Of course, they're going to go in there. They're not going to go in there and slam Dick Harpootlian, who's the 3rd phone call from Joe Biden and the most powerful person in the state of South Carolina at this time. His wife's an ambassador to Slovenia. There isn't a national defense lawyer in the world that's going to get on TV and say, hey, Dick Harpootlian blew it yesterday. You know, he should have expired long ago like milk. You know, he's an older lawyer. He's 74 years old. Is there anything left in the tank? Everybody should be asking hard questions. Dick and I used to be friends. We're not friends anymore because he reported me to the bar and did a couple other things that that chafed me a little bit. But of course, national criminal defense lawyers are all going to stick up for each other.
Eric, you're going to overtake Aragos by the time this is all said and done. Trust me, you'll be the new elite criminal defense attorney. But big shout out to good old Pugsley, who is a friend of the show. Let's just get into some of what happened today. Finally, they released the unredacted 911 call after the shooting. You hear a hysterical Alex Murdaugh saying, I need the police and an ambulance immediately. Neither one of them is moving. Prosecutors argue that he was faking his grief in a bid to try to pin the murders on someone else, a.k.a. cousin Eddie, potentially. And then he tells law enforcement, or the 911 operator, I should say, that he's going to his house to get a gun. The interesting part about this is Alex Murdaugh, we find out, tells the 911 operator that his son, Paul Murdoch, had been in a boat crash and had been getting threats for, quote, months and months and months, seemingly planting a seed for motive on the behalf of someone else. How does this play
if it comes out in trial, whether they ever reported that to the police that he was getting death threats. That's going to be an interesting thing. Look, if my son is getting death threats, and I don't know whether you have children, Amy, but if my son's getting death threats, I'm picking up the phone call and calling Lexington County Police. Okay, so let's see if they filed police reports to back that up. There's 2 things that happened on these phone calls. I have no problem with sometimes he's crying and sometimes he's not. Somebody who sees their wife and kid dead are going to be in shock, and everybody can react differently. Every behavioralist will tell you that. The 2 things, though, that do bother me, when you call 911, when you pick up the phone and dial the number, it begins to record immediately. It doesn't start recording when Helen answers and says 911 Colleton County. It starts to do it now. Now, if I called 911 and my wife and son are lying dead in a pool of blood, I'm hyperventilating. I'm screaming. If it's ringing twice, I'm saying, answer the GD phone. It was total silence until she picks up the phone, and then Alex is off to the races. So that troubled me. Then you heard from the person who came to secure the crime scene that Alex was histrionic, talking, mile a minute, crying, whatever. And then a fireman walked behind him and he stopped dead, turned around and said, "How are you doing?" Turned around and resumed the manic talk. So those two things to me trouble me. The last thing I'll say that troubled me is out of 101 jailhouse phone calls, I didn't hear a lot of Alex screaming, "Get me out of here. I need to find out who killed my wife and kid." He didn't scream, "What is the state doing to find out who the real killers are?" He put a time-sensitive reward out there that expired after 6 months instead of saying, "Let's up the reward, or should we hire our own investigators?" He wanted to talk about Gamecock football, Clemson football, whatever. And to show you how insensitive he is, on one of those phone calls, he says to Buster, "Hey, we planted out a lot of corn. The deer's plentiful. Son, why don't you go out there and hunt?" And Buster said, "Dad, I'm not going back to Mizell. That's where Mom and Paul were killed." And Alex said, "Okay, then I'll call Corey Fleming. He's got to go out there and thin out the herd."
So to your point about these tears and the emotion, your friend, is it Mandy Matney or Matney?
Matney.
Mandy Matney, who is the creator of the Murdaugh Murders podcast, correct, Eric? Which you help out with. So shout out to them. Great podcast.
And then we do Cup of Justice podcast together.
Cup of Justice.
So all your listeners need to listen to Cup of Justice for me.
100%. So she tweeted out today. You were tweeting, which I was keeping an eye on, but she tweeted out, Mandy Matney did, "You mean the tears that we never saw in any other hearing or in all those jailhouse phone calls? The tears that suddenly could benefit Alex Murdaugh? These people need to do their homework before they say this stuff on TV." I guess she's talking about pundits. It's completely irresponsible. So that is an interesting takeaway, perhaps crocodile tears indeed. And Vroom, to you, Amy, writes, and she's talking to Barbara Florence, "Agree 100%. My hunch is defense, via their jury profiling experts, has ID'd exactly which juror or jurors are susceptible to confusion and therefore doubt, and Harpootlian is directing to that juror." Is that what is happening? Is that what should be happening?
Absolutely. Again, the money that is spent on jury consultants, and I believe you had a body language expert on the other day. She was great. I actually watched that whole podcast with my friend Amy. But absolutely, and he's not just talking to that one or two, but he's focusing on that one or two. But he is talking to all of them because it is a high burden. I mean, it is, and as it should be. And I'm the thing I really agree with Eric is that it's about justice, and whether I like Alec or not, which I don't. I still want the system to work, because if it can work for somebody like him, then it can work for anybody. And that's, and that's what a good defense lawyer should do. I disagree with a lot of the things that have been done by this defense lawyer or other defense lawyers who will go and put into the press what they want to be heard, or, say things that, they haven't vetted themselves. I have such a problem, with this whole ironclad alibi. And now they're just, that's why that dog video is so important, because that's just, there was no reason to lie about it. And maybe that won't be enough doubt. It won't be able to overcome all that doubt, but I'm telling you that, he's doing exactly what I would do in trial, which is, show where the problems are, because no investigation is perfect, but, could have been better.
Look, I respect Amy. I respect Amy because she fights for those that can't fight for themselves, and they don't have the money to hire a Dick Harpootlian. And Amy is an extremely good attorney and competent. The cup of justice saying came about when I argued against Alex's bond in the Satterfield hearing. Dick was arguing and advocating for a $50,000 bond, and the state was willing to do a $200,000 bond. And I got in front of Judge Newman and said, take a look at the 300 cameras back in the courtroom. They're going and projecting this all out through the entire world that's watching our state. He disgraced our state. He stole from clients. He stained our bar. You need to make a statement. And I said, Alex needs to drink from the same cup of justice that everybody else needs. And I said, if you had a man that came before you that stole $4.3 million with a gun, you would load this guy up. I said, Alex stole it with a pen, and he's a serial pen slinger. So make him drink from the same cup of justice. And I think that's what we've seen. That Judge Newman, Judge Lee, who set his bond at $7 million, I think we're seeing that he's got to drink from the same cup of justice that some of the clients that Amy has that don't have the money to pay for a Dick Harpootlian. And that's my hope. Whatever the judge did.
That's a great title. And if I can give you one producing tip, and you might have done it already, the open to your podcast should be that statement in court to open the show. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I say cups up.
Cups up. Now, Eric Bland, who you're looking at, tweeted today back to those crocodile tears, if they are in fact crocodile tears. And he tweeted, look, I'm not saying that Alex's emotions he's showing in court and in 911 are all fake, but please let's not forget that he's a master actor. So interesting to see that people
I talked to a psychologist who said that you could kill your wife and kid and still feel sorry and sad because you could be a sociopath. So I think it was totally real tears when his family came into court that he hadn't seen in a year and a half because he was isolated in a jail cell. And if you're seeing he's got some of that affect when you're alone, you whether you tick or whatever. But seeing your son and your wife, even though you may did it, there is a part of your brain that you still love them. He may, I don't know if he killed him. If he did, that doesn't mean he didn't love Paul in a way or his wife. He just snapped. It happens. So I don't dispute the validity of his sadness, but let's not forget that this man is a master manipulator. He manipulated Cousin Eddie. He manipulated his law firm. He manipulates everybody to give him money.
So DB writes here, Amy, I find it very odd that when he found the bodies and was supposedly checking to see if they had a pulse, the son was not rolled over but left face down. You guys are talking about very fine details related to this case. Is this one that the state should jump on?
And I hate to do it just because, it's a terrible thing, but it wasn't just that his head was blown off. Literally his brain
was at his feet,
was out, next to his leg. I mean, there was no, are they dead? Or no, his brain was outside of his body. You
heard what Sergeant Green said. Mm-hmm. He said, I didn't need to check them. There was so much blood that had already coagulated. Mm-hmm. And Paul's head, there was nothing there. Mm-mm. Now, Dick latched onto something. The cop pulled him over because he wanted to see if there was a gun underneath Paul. And he asked him why. And the cop said, well, maybe it was a murder-suicide situation that they thought that Paul killed his mother and then killed himself. Dick is going to offer that up, I'm sure, somewhere during the trial and at closing. It's just another possible explanation.
And so Barry McRoy of Colleton County Fire and Rescue, he was one of the people who took the stand today, and he was describing the injuries. And he says, kind of matter-of-factly, which I don't know, I think made it even more powerful. This is the exact quote that they're just talking about. You can see there is substantial damage to his head, meaning Paul's head. There's a lot of blood, and there appears to be his brain down there by his foot. I mean, Amy, you're shaking your head yes. What does a jury think when they hear that?
I mean, it's my hope that they feel sadness for the victims before anything. But it's one fact that they have to weigh in, and it's the thing that, and I will say this until I am blue in the face, the fact that his phone was sitting on his butt cheek, and that was the most important thing, knowing that video existed. That I cannot get past that. I can't. Nobody else put that phone there except for Alex.
And so, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And he had to go into his pocket to do it.
You know what it reminds me of? The old adage: when you see a turtle on top of a fence post, how did he get there? Mm-hmm. Somebody had to put it there. Mm-hmm. Same way with the phone.
And it's that, and so if I'm a juror, I'm struggling with the gruesomeness. I mean, literally, not just pieces of his brain, his whole brain, and it's right there. I mean, the butt cheeks here, and the brain is here, and for someone,
to say they checked the pulse,
right,
and then this same first responder goes on, and speaking of Maggie, says she had a hole in her head to where you could actually see inside of her head. I mean, this is
the last shot was execution shot down. He hit her in the leg as she was running away. The other thing that came out in the opening statement, no defense wounds. You know what that means? They didn't see it coming.
Amy, this is a kind of courtroom theatrics, but I'm curious to get your take on it.
I love courtroom theatrics.
The prosecutor was asking about if a first responder saw blood in the water or something along those lines. And Dick Harpootlian says, objection, if he's going to pursue this frivolous line of questioning, I'd ask that the jury be excused. He objects a couple times. The judge ultimately sustains it. Harpootlian thanks Judge Newman, and Judge Newman says, I don't need to be thanked for any ruling. What was the judge doing there? Just asserting his dominance?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'll tell you this. I think it was very it was very interesting on Dick. I think it endeared Dick, because then Dick went on to say, oh, sorry. Oh, wait, thank you. Oh, and I think that that was done very purposely. The follow up by Dick with all of that. And then, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. I think it was effective, because Dick does come across as a bully, I saw one objection earlier in the day, and he was steaming mad, and he stood up and objected and then didn't sit down. He just kept standing there. The thing, I've tried many cases in front of Newman, won and lost a lot of cases in front of him. And it is his courtroom, I can tell you. And I think he's trying to maintain control of that, because he does both. Creighton, I've not seen in trial, and I've never seen him in a murder trial, but he knows that all of those things pick up on that, and jurors love judges, and I think that Dick knows that too, and so he's thanking the judge and trying to, and I think that it was very calculated.
Dick's an alpha dog, and he'll urinate all over the courtroom unless you prevent him from doing it. I mean, that's the way it's going to be.
Amy, right back to you for a second. This is a case that I have just familiarized myself with, because we were all over the Idaho 4 case, and as news people do, we pivot, and I've got to learn a lot in a little bit of time, which is why I'm kind of not the brightest bulb in the box, but that's a whole other story. But what I'm wondering is, if you're either on the defense side or the state side here, how much do you worry about the jury following this story? Because it is so complex, complicated, with so many tributaries that go off in different directions.
It's concerning, because I think that the state thinks that maybe they can sneak some character evidence in there, that he's a bad guy because he steals from the people who need it the most, and they may want that, even though they're instructed not to do that. It's a dangerous, but on the other hand, it could go against the defense because they're like, okay, this isn't just a lawyer who is accused very circumstantially of killing his wife and child. This is a lawyer who is involved in a lot of things. And I think that one thing that you'll see with the lay witnesses or even with the attorney witnesses is that Alec pulled the wool over his family, over his friends, over everybody's eyes. And so I think it can work against or for, either side, just depending on how it's presented. You just don't know. I mean,
here's my concern, and I voiced it for the better part of the year. The state chose to bring these financial crimes first. They impaneled a grand jury for 9 months, and they brought back 99 charges of against Alex over 999 years. They charged him 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago with income tax evasion. I don't know why they didn't bring the financial crime trials first. Get the convictions. The Satterfield case can be tried by a first-year lawyer and get it done in 3 days. Checks came in, they were diverted, they went to Alex's fake bank account. You convict them, boom. This is going to smell a lot like OJ. Amy, I don't know how old you are. I've been a lawyer for 35 years. OJ got off, not guilty, and then they convicted him of the robbery charges on his Heisman Trophy and his jerseys and all of his different stuff. And the public felt like we're kind of convicting him and giving him this wickedly long sentence that somebody else would get 3 years for. And we gave him, 15 years because we didn't get him convicted of murder. The same thing's going to happen here. If it's a hung jury or a not guilty jury, then they're going to go try him on probably 1 or 2 of those financial cases, and he's going to get convicted. And then they won't even be trying the other 9, 10, 12 charges that they brought. And this was a lot of money that we laid out. And I think our state attorney general, that we've not heard boo from, should have told us, what is the reasoning why we're trying the murder case first? You charged all these other cases. Why are you doing it this way?
I filed a speedy trial motion in the roadside shooting case, which
good. Has it been heard?
Which was my client was arrested over a year ago.
Sitting in the can now. Mm-hmm. He's sitting in jail.
And that's, Eric, you bring up an excellent point. Maybe they're doing things backwards, but I'm no jurist here. So Albanian Anissa says, and I thought this is an interesting point. Also, anything under 10 minutes to commit this crime, clean up and be at mom's in under 10 minutes. Amy, does this raise a good point again, but this time on the side of the defense that he didn't have the time to do this?
He didn't get to the moms in 10 minutes.
He had the time. He had the time to do it. I think that a closer. I was a little disappointed in both openings, to be quite honest. I felt like though that the state, especially with this phone evidence, which is we all use our phones, and Creighton is right. We all have them, but there is a chunk of time that Alex's phone isn't being used, and there wasn't that much cleanup. Trust me, it's a gruesome scene. It wasn't that much cleanup.
He was more concerned to clean himself up.
Exactly.
As he went to the house, and by the way, he started crafting his alibi beginning at 9:06 p.m. Mm-hmm. He was frenetically texting. If you text your wife twice and you call her once and she doesn't answer the phone or the text messages, you'll drive to the kennels if that's where you know that she is. You're not going to drive down the driveway and not go check on her. Then he calls Chris Wilson for 12 minutes. Mm-hmm. Then he sends a couple more texts. Then he calls Chris Wilson again. Mm-hmm. He's trying to craft an alibi.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And I think that the state, if they really want to use this evidence, they need to use it more powerfully one thing a good defense attorney does is just to know what the state's going to do. And so I've never been a prosecutor, but I would think that just laying that evidence out there, because there is a chunk of time that his phone is not being used, and it to me is incredibly suspicious that, just like Eric said, the minute that he gets back to his phone, he is nonstop on it, calling people, talking to people that he, the grounds. I mean, it's a lot. It's too much for me. It's too much.
Contrived. It's contrived.
Mm-hmm. Mia Angelina writes, STS, love your show. So excited to catch it live. We love you. Thank you for catching it live. And then Albanian Anissa, and this is what I'm talking about right here, Eric Bland. You do look great, Eric. Like that hair. He is no joke. Taking over Garricos' top spot, man. It's happening as we speak. This comment from Samantha Leon. Alex has been the big man for 100 years, and apparently they had a ton of pull with local authorities. I don't know about the motive, but I think he is guilty of dozens of crimes. The reason I bring this up, not only is Samantha come on often and ask great questions, but does this speak to a bigger issue of corruption in that small county, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a unique little hamlet, but we're not unique to any other state. Every state in the country has a Hampton County where it's small enough that 2 or 3 people or a family have control over the law enforcement, over the courts and businesses. So yes, it's made our state look bad, but Richland County, you can't get away with this. Lexington, where she and I live, you cannot get away with this. Do you agree with me?
Oh, absolutely.
There's no way. There's no way that you get it. So it's not endemic of our whole state. It's a small area, and we've kind of started cleaning it up. Look, sunlight is the best disinfectant. I have gone on TV. I've lobbied hard against the system. I've had grievances filed against me because I'm constantly opening my mouth and running it to the press or anybody that'll put a microphone in front of my face. But ultimately, the people now want change. And so we'll see if the people of Hampton County demand change.
And I don't think it's just the people, Eric. I think that the lawyers,
we want change,
like you and I, that we don't. I don't laugh at lawyer jokes. I don't think that what I do. I don't think that my client's innocent, guilty, innocent of what they're charged with, but maybe guilty of something. I don't think that they think that this is funny. I don't think it's funny. I've dedicated my life, I think, just like Eric has, to helping people. And it hurts my heart. It really does to kind of have this just be like, oh, well, that's what lawyers do. And we are an honorable profession.
You said it best. I mean, anybody who knows me knows they can't tell a lawyer joke in front of me. It won't. It drives me crazy. I won't buy into it. I don't buy into it that, we lie when our mouths are moving. Yeah, I get paid a ton of money, but I earn it. It took me 35 years to figure out which screw to turn. Yeah, I'm going to get paid for it. But do they say that to a developer who makes $10 million developing land and building homes on there? Does he get criticized like us? No, I'm not going to tolerate it.
You work hard. You deserve the money. Jean Brown, things are deteriorating here. She wants to know if Eric is married. I'm not even going to go there, but I just did.
I have the greatest wife in the world, been married for 34 years. Her name is Renee, and I have 2 great kids. One's a doctor, one's in finance. Yeah, I love my wife dearly. And now they love you even more for that answer. So there was another witness, Colleton County Major Jason Chapman, and this is kind of the end of the meat and potatoes. We'll take a few more comments and call it a night. But this is about he was being asked about the 911 call. And he said, this Major Jason Chapman said, the only thing I thought was odd was he wanted to separate the call. It was, I need to call my family, and then the phone disconnected. First responders hadn't yet arrived. Amy, to you, I mean, that could seem suspicious on the one hand, like he had to go do something, maybe clean up. But on the other hand, maybe he was so stunned that he needed the comfort of his family.
So I know how I would react. I don't have children, but I have dogs, and I know that when you can't guess how somebody's going to react.
Right.
If Eric walks in on his wife and child, he would be screaming. He would be inconsolable because I know him. I've seen him with his wife. I saw him at the Pitbull concert. I know how he wouldn't be able to do that. So, but that I make that argument all the time is that people assume that you're supposed to react a certain way because that's how they would react. So to me, that was that there were much bigger red flags and things to be worried about. I don't find that as suspicious. I mean, one thing that we know about this family, about the Murdochs, and I've seen it myself. They're very close knit.
And they show up at every investigation. John Marvin or Alex will go to the hospital. The father goes. They all show up everywhere. And the
entire law firm was out at Moselle before.
And the police let them go right through the tape.
I know. Don't even get me started on that. But yeah, I mean, they're a very close family. That to me, because I don't know how I would react in any situation. And so to me, I don't think that it's healthy for the state to focus on that. I think they have a lot of things that were red flags and suspicious that they should be focusing on.
So we had John Mobley on last night, who's a criminal defense attorney in the great state of South Carolina. Great guy. Loved having him on. He said, look, whoever committed this crime had to be covered in blood. And we find out on the stand today, and we'll get Eric's take on this. Murdoch had no visible blood on him. He told 911 dispatchers that he had touched their bodies to check them. Both victims had sustained devastating injuries and were in pools of their own blood, tissue, and brain matter. Eric, you're shaking your head no. What say you?
You could be 10 feet away and you're not going to get anything on you. And then he killed his wife with the long rifle. And we don't think he checked his pulse because nobody's going to check the pulse of somebody who's blown away. And so he knew he killed Paul. He wasn't going to go wipe blood all over himself. That's not what he was going to do.
Well, and also, absolutely. And think about this, because we know that last devastating shot to Maggie was straight up and down. The blood is going to go the direction of the bullet. There's not going to be a ton of blood spattering out of the back of her head.
The blood spatter, just so you know, isn't blood in the way you think it's red blood flying at you. It's mist.
Mm-hmm.
It's you couldn't see it with the naked eye.
No, I absolutely believe that they would not be covered in
blood. That's why he took the blue coat to his mom. Listen, when was the last time you took a cloak from your closet to your mom's house, who you don't go visit because she's got Alzheimer's? 4 days later, you take your coat rolled up in a ball and take it to your mom's house. What the hell's that?
And it's filled with gunshot residue.
My problem is every time an attorney says something, I go,
"Oh, you know what Garrigo says? Yeah. Oh, that's fine. There's gunshot residue everywhere out in the country. These people, because all they do is shoot guns. It's all over their cars. It's all over their clothes. No problem that they have GSR all everywhere."
Well, Garrigos he's in Hollywood, so he's looking at South Carolina as you guys are all hunters out there with your beagles or whatever. How about Mega Truth? Does the panel think Buster will testify in support of his father? If so, how would the prosecutor treat that testimony? Everyone's shaking their head. No, Amy, you first.
No, he wasn't there. He would only be presented as a character witness. The danger of putting someone up as a character witness is that then you open the door to, oh, he was such a great loving father. He was such a great strong. Mm-hmm. What about they open the door to all of the crimes that he's.
But it's pandering, and you don't want to do that. The jury doesn't want to see this young man be put up there who lost a mother and a brother. He's a real victim. Okay. Whether you want to say he may have had knowledge of Stephen Smith's death, and we don't know that, he's a total innocent in this one. Okay. Yes, he gave his driver's license to his brother to get beer. That happens every single day. My brothers gave me their driver's license to go up to Fusco's to get Genesee cream ale when I was a kid. When I was 17 years old, I got my brother's driver's. Look, I'm not going to make that kid face purgatory forever because he gave his brother a driver's license. I think it would be an absolute mistake if either side put up Buster.
I completely agree.
By the way, Eric, do they have Wawas in South Carolina?
Yes.
They do.
No, in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
But not in South Carolina.
Philadelphia.
Oh,
Greatest.
they have them in Florida now, Wawas. Amy, this one's to you. Your name spelled incorrectly, but that's okay. Are there any texts of Maggie or Paul prior to the shooting that really helped the prosecutor's case?
That helped the prosecutor? Well, so, I mean, there's certainly text messages. I think how it helps the prosecutor's case is it shows that, I mean, there are a ton of text messages. I mean, Maggie was talking to Blanca about picking up Alex's favorite Capri Suns. She was talking about dinner. Paul was talking to everybody. The way that it helps the prosecution is that these people, these poor people that are no longer with us, were always on their phone. They didn't go spans of time
right
without using their phones. And so I think that's what helps the prosecution.
Remember, Paul had house arrest. So, he's home, in the middle of nowhere. And Amy and I have been there. When I tell you it's in Jabip, and there's nothing close by. You got to drive 15 miles just to get to a convenience store, not to a supermarket, to a convenience store. I think, isn't there the text though from her to her friend Amy, where she said Alex is up to something? Isn't that a text message, or was that a phone call?
It had to have been a phone call. I haven't seen the text message.
Okay.
These two have eventually got to get back to work and life. So I thought the fire alarm was going off there. That woke me up. But we'll take two more comments and then get some closing thoughts, and then hopefully do it again with you guys as soon as next week. Ray of Light writes, Eric or Amy, what's the jury's sequestration rules? Do they go home or taken by U.S. Marshals to undisclosed hotel? I asked due to a bribe potential. Eric, what do you know about that?
They're home. He hasn't sequestered the jury. He hasn't put them in a hotel. Now, look, most jurors take the oath. They go home. They tell their spouse or their kids, look, I can't talk about it. And people honor that. But every once in a while, there's going to be one person on that jury that's going to do an internet search or try to see what scientific proof is, what the blood spatter means. And they may slip up in the jury room and say, oh, last night I did this search, and then they get caught, and then there could be a problem. But I think by and large, these people, like Amy said, these jurors respect Judge Newman. They look at him like a father figure, and he told them, do not violate what I'm telling you, and people honor it.
I have great concern, though, because it really, even without the sequestration and even without somebody actively, it's on every news channel, it's on the radio. You can't, if you're a juror and you're taking this seriously, you literally almost have to sequester yourself, because if, let's say, juror number 8 is home and she's making dinner for her family, and as most people, have the TV on in the background or the news, that's not her trying to break the rules. But my concern, and it's been a great concern of mine, just with all of the exposure, and not just this case. Any case. I think that inadvertent exposure could happen, and I don't know the answer. I don't think it's right, especially in a trial that is moving, in my opinion, extremely slow. That'll probably take a little while. I don't think that we should lock people away, but at the same time,
243 witnesses, and they've done 5.
Got a ways to go. I called that, saying there's no way this is done by February 17th, but we'll see. That's the target date. This is something I had not heard of at all from Barbara Florence. What do we know about the footprint on the back of Maggie's leg? Eric, anything? Do we know anything about that?
No, but is it a dog print or is it a footprint? We don't know, but that was a curious piece of evidence that Dick said they really should have investigated, because it doesn't match Alex's footprint. Now, she could have been helping Paul in the kennels, and it was Paul's footprint, or a dog print. We just don't know, but that's reasonable doubt. That falls into the second shooter or somebody else.
I want to give a shout out to Spaced Coast, who is helping us moderate. Thank you so much. Last question here from Ann Vroom, and then we'll get closing thoughts. We've heard that Alec is bankrupt and neck deep in potential fraud debt damages. Is he really, or does he, via the extended family, still have huge wealth, Eric?
He just inherited, as did all the three other siblings, $16 million from Big Daddy, who was a prosecutor. Now that's a whole different question. If you're a prosecutor your whole life, how do you accumulate $16 million? But he got $4 million in a trust. So that's untouchable. He had an IRA that they depleted, and he had to pay the tax on, and $600,000 went to Dick. $300,000 went to pay attorney's fees to the receiver, and there's a couple $100,000 left that's going to go into a pot for the victims to be able to grab. But at this point, the you know who's ahead of everybody now? United States government. The state just did these income tax charges. When all this is over with and he finally gets his time, whether it's in these financial crimes or murders, the feds are going to bring income tax charges on him. The reason we do not have any federal charges against Alex right now is because if they brought charge one, Dick would march him down the next day to federal court and say, we're pleading guilty, full max. Don't want to plea, load me up, send me to Club Fed. Because Alex is dying to do his time in a federal prison instead of the big houses that we have in the state of South Carolina.
Eric, final question here. I lied about the last one being the last one. Don asking, not sure how Eric can speak on the panel if he has to appear in court on the case. Just curious. Respectfully.
I have to appear in court, but I'm not sequestered. So, if they call me as a witness, it's all going to depend if Judge Newman lets in the financial crimes as a motive, or it's violative of State v. Lyle, that it's bad character evidence. So the only way you get bad character evidence is you show that, it passes the acid test and it links it to the crime, because every piece of evidence is prejudicial. The question is it more probative than prejudicial? But every piece of evidence that comes in, Judge Ross Anderson said, is prejudicial. It is. Every piece of evidence is prejudicial to one party or another.
I'm so worried to wrap it up because I've got to say Amy's last name one more time. After graduating from the University of Florida, Amy Zimmercheck.
Perfect.
Zimmercheck taught high school U.S. history. And after a serious automobile accident and a move to Lexington, South Carolina, she took a job as a paralegal at the Lexington County Public Defender's Office and has now become a member of her own firm. She hung her own tile and is
Amy, I'm building an office in Lexington right next to Aldea's. We'll have to go to lunch.
I know, absolutely.
She is doing yeoman's work. Amy,
she is. A good person.
How does this trial end, and what are you expecting in the coming days?
Well, in the coming days, it's going to be very busy, especially for me, because my client has been subpoenaed to testify, and so I believe that if he is called, I think it would be in the next week or so. How does it end? Hopefully, it ends just. I hope that the jurors do their job. That's always my hope. I hope that everybody follows the rules. And I hope that as the truth is brought out by the jury, that's I know it sounds so silly, but I've tried in the last 5 years, I've tried about a case every other month, minus the COVID years.
Wow.
And so it's, a lot of murder trials. And I've won some, I've lost some, and I've hung a lot. But I'll tell you, I just hope that it brings a little bit of integrity back to our profession and to our system, regardless of what happens.
The man who is blissfully married with a great head of hair is Eric Bland, selected for inclusion in the South Carolina super lawyers in the 2015, 2016, and 2017 list.
18, 19, 20, 21, 19, and 22 and
22. It keeps going. So I had an old bio. It keeps going, keeps going. Plus, he is part of the Murdaugh's Murders podcast and Cup of Justice, the Cup of Justice podcast. Amy, do you have a podcast?
I do not. I listen to all of them though. I spend a lot of time in my car. My office is here in Columbia, but I practice throughout the state, and so I'm one of those lawyers that reads every single piece of discovery and keeps asking for it all. So,
Amy, you can say it. You work harder than Eric. We get it.
I'm a good listener, but I do not have my own podcast. But I listen to Eric's.
The system doesn't work without people like Amy. I mean, I have a lot of big cases and I can make a lot of money, and she does really well, but she represents people that need representation by good lawyers. My hat's off to her. And, you're going to bring a tear to my eye, but she is what our system is built on. This is what it's meant to be, to have a lawyer that will go toe to toe with the state. Right there is who we should be applauding tonight. Don't applaud me, applaud her.
Yeah, and Amy, and I'm not saying Eric doesn't do it, but it sounds like Amy is doing it for all the right reasons. So kudos to you, Amy. Eric, does this end in some sort of mistrial, a hung jury? And what are you expecting in the short term outside of yourself testifying?
I think in the short term, it's a NASCAR race. So whenever you see NASCARs, you just see nose going a little bit ahead. Then this guy's nose goes a little bit ahead. So every day you'll have a little bit this way, a little bit that way. I don't know how it's going to end. I think there's going to be a bombshell in the middle. I do believe that there's going to be some kind of bombshell that comes out, some witness that just comes in and just lights the fuse, and a stick of dynamite goes off. Mistrial I could see happening, but I see a hung jury more than I see any other verdict.
Couple of quick closing notes from me. Yours truly. I interviewed Dr. Henry Lee. If you don't know who he is, you better Google him. He's the preeminent forensic scientist in the world, and talked to him about the Idaho 4 case.
He's a little old now. He's a little old.
He's a little old. He's only about 85. 85.
Here in Cyril Weck is another guy.
But he talked about the Idaho 4 case, talked about really interesting stuff with OJ. He had to revisit the JFK assassination. If you don't know who he is worth Googling. And then tomorrow, noon Eastern time, we do our weekly live show with Phil and Gil, Detective Phil Waters, who was a lead investigator on close to 400 homicide cases. Jonathan Gillum is a Navy SEAL and a former FBI special agent. They're going to talk about this case. They're going to talk about the Idaho case, and I'm all talked out. Until next time, love you, America.
Thank you.
Amy, I'll give you a shout.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, you guys.